Hello everyone and welcome to the round 22 trade targets and burning questions. Although I feel like I need to rename this series of trade targets because, let me just move my microphone back a little bit. Do we have any trades left to even use? That's the question, I think. Yeah, I see. Let me know how many trades you got as well in the chat. I've got 2 at the moment, which feels like a lot more than others, to be honest. I'm a little bit tired today, so we'll fly through the content as we always do, but I'll try to get to everyone's questions as many as I can, and obviously keep posting throughout the live stream as well. Thank you to Moz already being here in high spirits. That's what I love to hear. You're in high spirits despite your team falling apart, channeling the green arrows this week. That's it. That's the motto we live by. I've been on the same mindset. Have got green arrows since round 10. I think round 10 or round 11. I haven't had a red arrow. I don't want to jinx it, but we're on a good run, which is nice. So let's keep it up. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm seeing a few people post their trades. 6 from Davey K. Now I'm very jealous of that. 6 trades is luxury at the moment. I think most people I know of probably got 2 or 1, maybe 3. Grego's got 4, Clutch Camel's got 2, so a bit of a mix there. I'll quickly just give a quick overview of how I went last week. So I updated to 1465, so I was pretty happy with that. And green arrow 520 places, so I'm now 1824. So yeah, pretty happy with that. I'm 173 points off top 1000. So I think getting to top 1000 would be awesome for the end of the season. So yeah, 173 points, 4 rounds. So I've got about, what is that, 40 something ish points a week that I need to make up. So that's the aim. Try to get 40 points above par and hope that I can push into top 1000. But we'll just aim as high as we can. Quick shout out as well to the group league. So Jake with the God Squad, appropriately named for round 21, scored 1,574. So a really big week for him. The Bearded Clams is topping the group league in 7th overall ranking. Shout out to you, Alex. I see you're in the chat. Boosting for Haaland. Your mind's not even on SC. That's probably why you're so high up. You can afford to relax. You're sitting pretty in 7th, so congrats, mate. Hope you keep flying. As well as Toby had a really big week. With actually, Alex, you both had big weeks, 1,500 plus, and you're both sitting in the top 10. So awesome stuff. Definitely en route for a trackie. So yeah, keep up the good work. First place is pretty far ahead, but you know what? Just go for gold. Go for glory. Talon, Shane, Rob, Vaughan, Curtis, James, Guy and Samuel all doing very well in our group league as well, and Talon's in 30th, so yeah, shout out to him in bronze position, I guess, if you can call that, for the group league. I really need to think of some good prizes, hopefully for next season. Hadn't really organised any, unfortunately. Maybe shout out to anyone who wants to sponsor the channel. If you want to get in touch and get some prizes for the good viewers out there, let me know. And obviously quick shout out as well to our members as well. I won't read all your names, but thank you all for your additional support. Really do appreciate it. All right, so we'll get into the meat of the live stream. So I know many people don't have trades, and it is a bit hard to kind of talk through trade targets and things, but there's still some questions I think that are pretty common. I've tried to pull some in from Twitter as well. So for example, Chazza125 has basically posted the main question for this week, which is Joe Tapine to Cam Murray. It's actually the most common trade so far this week. I checked that out just a little bit earlier. Now, it's very easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, I think Cam Murray is a fantastic buy this week. He's been killing it, coming off a big 130 points. He's got a tough run, but I'm not as concerned with Murray. He ends the season very well historically, and if you actually look at those numbers below the draw there, they're not amazing, 53, 64, 60, and 73. Those are his averages versus that opponent. I've taken that from the SuperCoach Plus section of the app. And look, nothing to write home about, but I think we all know that he's going to perform probably better than that. I think for a middle forward, it's fine, big minutes, tighter games. He's an absolute weapon. So yes, I like Murray as a trade-in. Tapine to Murray. Now, I'll just give my quick thoughts as well on selling Tapine. So the latest I've heard is that it's a 1 to 3 week rib issue. So that's from NRL Physio. And with the rib, we saw it very recently as well with Ryan Madison. It's a bit of a pain management issue. So you would think that, look, he hasn't been named. I'll clear that up as well. He hasn't been named this week, so he's definitely out for this week. And it could just be the 1 week. Like my feeling is with Tapine, if you've got a suitable backup, hopefully like a Max King, maybe a Taumalolo, I would rather keep someone like a Tapine just because you've got, if you've got the cover. He's a guy who will come back he would come back fairly soon, and we all know he's been killing it as well recently. Now, the only thing I'll mention with Tapine, which may be a potential reason, if you're say in a for example, like a must-win head-to-head, a couple of questions were coming in about head-to-head strategy. If you're like in a must-win head-to-head, or you've got a few extra trades, maybe like even if you're sitting on say like 4 or 3 trades, there is potentially an argument to sell because he's at a really good price. And with the pain issue of the rib, physio has always said that the performance of these players when they come back isn't as good as what they were before. My caveat is that Tapine at like 80% is still probably better than almost every other front row forward. Like he might regress to like 65, 70, which is still awesome. That's still keeper numbers. So there is an argument to sell. I think it's very team specific though. It's head-to-head specific if you're in a must-win. I feel like if you're with 2 trades and you've got cover, I would maybe just hold off. I understand he probably is a lot of people's easiest way to get Murray. It just doesn't feel like a great trade, especially when we've seen so much carnage the last few weeks. I would try to exercise as much restraint as I probably can recommend with trades at the moment, because we've seen, Tapine and Hughes were like the 2 most traded in players last week, both gone down for this week. We saw Cleary get suspended. Players are dropping out, so you just want to be a little bit more conscious with your trades. So I like trading him out if you're in a must-win spot or you don't have the cover. Like ideally, I would not trade him to another front row forward if you can avoid it. Like if you've got the duels, I'd rather go for a second row forward like a Murray, because front row forward, if you look at it, the next best option is probably like a Payne Haas. But even Payne Haas, apart from that big 105 he scored when he came back, he's kind of been hovering around the low 60s. He's not doing anything special. Like Max King might get 10 points less than that. So I'd prefer to go for a second row forward like Murray for sure. So look, I think if you're in a good spot with trades, like for example, Davey K, you're with 6, Greg with 4, I feel like it's okay to do that. Particular trade, Tapine to Murray, I think, yeah, great. 2 trades left, it's kind of, it feels a bit too on the cusp, just because it then only leaves with 1 left for like the last 3 rounds. So yeah, even if you're in 3 trades, I think it's okay. Like for example, SC Wildcard saying he's got 3 trades left. If you're left with 2, I feel like you can probably get by. If you're just left with 1, then it becomes a little bit more precarious. So that's kind of my overall thoughts. I can see Joshua in the chat. He's got 13 trades left. I'm going to get rid of Tapine. Yeah, Joshua, you've got 13 trades left. You can't even use all your trades before end of the season. Make the move in that opinion, because you can just afford to trade him out and trade him back in if you want to. So I think that's okay. But yeah, for example, OT Hero is asking Tapine and Dave Fafita to Haas and Dillbags or Haas and Cook. I'll try to get to some more trade-specific questions maybe at the back end of the stream. But my first inkling, I'll get to Fafita actually in a little bit. I know he's been very underwhelming, but I do have some reasoning behind why you might want to keep Fafita. I know it sounds crazy because he's been frustrating as hell, but not a bad run coming up for the Titans. So I do feel like there is scope to potentially hold on to someone like a Fafita. So Jonah, for example, asking, here's Tapine, Hughes and Barnett all in his squad with only 1 trade left. Who am I trading? So I'd probably say Mitch Barnett in that instance, because Barnett has been ruled out with what looks like a thumb issue, and he looks like he won't be back until, say, round 25. So he's the one who's probably got the least gun potential out of those 3 and also out for the longest. Therefore, I'd say he's probably the most easy sell. If obviously the question is money and value, then yes, Tapine, because he's probably got a higher price, or even a Jerome Hughes. Issue with trading Hughes is that if you don't have the duels, the halfback spot doesn't have a great amount of options there. So yeah, that's some overall thoughts on Tapine and Murray. I'll see this other question from Sandy saying, you already have Murray. You said Tapine for either Lane or Kolomotangi. So maybe it's a good segue. I'll move on to some other second row forwards. So there were a few questions coming in from Twitter about second row forwards. So I think obviously a lot of people, if they are looking to sell Tapine, or they're looking to sell maybe like an Isaac Dungo via duels, go to a second row forward, there are a few that you could consider. Now, I actually haven't really thought about Kolomotangi, to be honest, Sandy, probably because the draw is getting a bit tougher for the Rabbitohs now for the rest of the season. So I just feel like his attacking stats aren't going to be there. So I do prefer Lane in a straight 50-50 between him and Kolomotangi. Like starting off with Lane, like he's been killing it. I've owned him for a while and he's been really, really solid. So just looking at the table there, I've got their prices and I've got their 3-round average, got their draw, and then in the table below me, it's just got their season-long composition of scores of their total average. So it's not as recent numbers, it's just more of a season view, just to kind of give you an idea of obviously how the player scores their points. So Sean Lane I really like because he's actually had really solid base for like the last 8 weeks. He's definitely got the attacking upside. Got some decent matchups coming up. Like I don't think Rabbitohs for a back rower needs to be that much of a concern, to be honest. Like even the Bulldogs, even though they're playing well, I still think that's a decent game for the Eels. Broncos are not playing their best, and even the Storm, Eels have shown to have a good grip on actually playing the Melbourne Storm, and even the Storm themselves have had their own injury issues and obviously not looking as good as well. So for me, Lane is a great option at 658k. The only thing is that Cam Murray's cheaper. So Sandy, I know it doesn't answer your question, but if you don't own Cam Murray, I'd be buying him over any other second row forward. I would say next best is probably Sean Lane, just because of how good he's been, how consistent he's been. He's definitely got a ceiling on him as well. So yeah, he's definitely my number 2 second row forward. There's a few other guys people are asking about. So for example, I'm looking at one question here from Josh Cruz. He's saying he's got 3 trades left. Should I do Tapine to Ola, Grant or Murray? Yeah, so based on what I just said, I think with 3 trades left, you can maybe get away with trading Tapine. Definitely not a must trade, but I feel like you've got the kind of trades to play with that. So yeah, I think it's okay, and I would definitely go Murray, in my opinion, Josh. I think he's got the best ceiling out of any of those 3 guys. Even though the draw is tough, he's been absolutely killing it, and he does historically end the season very well too. So yeah, Murray for sure out of those 3. Other second row forwards to consider, like I'm an Olukwatu owner. He's kind of dropped off recently. Obviously, Manly had the whole fiasco as well. He does have a good matchup this week with the Titans, but look, I probably can't say he's an outright buy with a 3-round average of 52. I would actually, I'm going to skip a few names here. So I'm going to skip Angus, Nanai, and Cotter, because I'm just looking at some of the prices here. So if you're comparing someone like an Olukwatu, if again you're looking for like pods, say head-to-head, or pods for the run home, Canberra have a really good run home. What you'll find is that a lot of the better teams, if you want to call it, like apart from the Sharks, like Rabbitohs, Roosters, Storm, Penrith, Cowboys, they've kind of all got tricky runs. Whereas some of these middle teams like Dragons, Raiders have got decent draws to the run home. So if you are looking for pods in your second row forward, Hudson Young and Adam Elliott. Someone asked me about Hudson Young last week. The reason I've also brought them up this week is because without Joe Tapine, you'd think that these guys, like Hudson Young plays pretty much 80 minutes anyway. Elliott you'd think would play a few extra minutes. I have to give a shout out to the Whisperer as well, because he's owned Elliott for forever. So with their run home, pretty decent 3-round average of 60 and 72. And I know that Elliott's also recently had a bit of an injury complaint in one of the games, so his scores are probably a little bit lower. So they've definitely got a bit of upside. Like Hudson Young's definitely got some ceiling on him. So I don't mind if you're taking a punt on second row forward, Hudson Young or Adam Elliott. Again, team dependent. Are you genuinely looking for a pod, for your head-to-head? Because if you're not, I'd say just go with a safer option of maybe like a Sean Lane or maybe an Angus, who's been doing pretty well recently, but his draw is not ideal. The safest option is probably Ruben Cotter. He's going to be one of those guys who'll give you like 55, 60, no worries. Nanai, so someone like Sandy's asking in Nanai, is he still a pod? I don't have the ownership numbers in front of me. Apologies. I'll quickly try to find it on SC Playbook's true ownership stats. But I still don't think Nanai is a great purchase. Like 746k is so expensive. The fact that you've got guys like Sean Lane who's like 100k cheaper, and I think it's going to be more consistent. Yes, doesn't have quite the ceiling of Nanai, but apart from that Tigers game, I struggle to see games where... Sorry, not the Tigers game. Apart from the Warriors game, I don't know where Nanai is maybe going to go massive again. So for me, I feel like the ship's kind of sailed on him to an extent. So I'm not too keen on Nanai personally. Also, if you look at his stats, he's obviously very attacking stat reliant. We kind of don't need to even look at the numbers to know that. In terms of his ownership, Sandy, I've just pulled it up. So he's still definitely a pod. So he's 6% owned in the top 100, 5% in the top 1,000, 8% the top 5,000, 10% the top 10,000. So yeah, he's still a pod, but yeah, I feel like the price is pretty expensive. So I don't think I'd be going to Nanai. So yeah, the Raiders boys, I quite like them as like a more of a pod with a bit of a ceiling. Now Fafita, I'll quickly touch on Fafita because that person earlier asked selling Fafita. I don't think Fafita, despite his frustrations, I don't think he's a sell because actually his draw is not too bad for the run home. Manly, Dragons, Knights and Warriors, it's pretty good. I'm just going to double check NRL.com and my normal spreadsheet because I don't want to mess up the draw and have that wrong. But like to my understanding, that's the draw for Fafita. And if so, I think it's a pretty good one. So I don't think that Fafita would probably be a sell in that instance, because despite him being bang average, you'd say, I think since he's come back into 80 minutes, I saw Tim Williams posted in his article that I think Fafita's had an average of about 62.5, which is not bad. And he's not really done that much, to be honest. So yeah, Fafita for me, I don't think is a sell. So for example, I'm looking at Riley's question here. He's saying he already has Murray and Nanai. Do I get Olukwatu or Fafita or Angus Crichton? Now, I would actually rank Lane above all three of those, Riley. If you've got the cash to get up to Sean Lane, I'd probably go Sean Lane based on what he's done the last kind of 6 to 8 weeks. If you are looking strictly between Olukwatu, Fafita or Angus, it feels hard to say Fafita's a buy just because he has been underwhelming. Despite the draw being okay, I probably would say Angus out of those three, just because I think Roosters as a team on the whole are looking the best out of those three teams. So Fafita with the draw, on the draw basis, yes, probably the best. But I think with the way the team's performing and Angus coming slightly back into form, I'd say Angus is probably the best out of those three in my opinion. So yeah, Angus I really like as a buy. 566k is a pretty good price for him as well. So that's my kind of wrap up of like other second row forwards that people might be considering as well, because I know that there were a few questions about that from a head-to-head point of view, and obviously a few people who are looking to still sell Tapine. There are some other options there as well. Jaden, for example, I haven't really got your two players that you're considering here. You're asking for a friend, McInnes for Joe Offengawi. I'm just going to double check that question because I hope you're not selling Offengawi. I think Offengawi is fine to hold. I'm pretty sure he scored 76 last week as well. So for me, Offengawi is not a sell. If you meant or one of the two, I'd still say Offengawi just because now that Finucane's back in the team, McInnes on the bench is just not going to be as effective from a Supercoach point of view. If you're asking either one, yeah, I'd say Offengawi. If you're selling McInnes for Joe Offengawi, I don't think that's also quite worth it. Offengawi, I think, is about 586k. I just would rather still go for maybe like an Angus who's got more of a ceiling, even chance it with like Fafita, who we know has got a ceiling and a decent draw, or take a chance on one of these Raiders forwards. Hudson Young's pretty safe for minutes. Just going to double check that on NRL SuperCoach Stats so I'm not talking nonsense here. So Hudson Young, you'd think I would have checked this before I went on stream, eh? No, look, Hudson Young, he's had one game where he's played 70 minutes. Every other game this season, he's played 80 minutes. So he's completely safe for minutes, you would think. Pretty decent base of he's got an average base of 42. He's got 46 base the last couple of weeks. But we do know he's got a bit of a ceiling. So yeah, for a head-to-head point of view, I think it's a decent pot actually with Hudson Young. Just looking at that draw coming up for him, it's a good run. And we know that the Raiders are still going to be fighting pretty hard to get into the top 8. Jake, yeah, I think you summed up pretty well there with Fafita. Let's just say Fafita is not a sell, but he isn't a buy. Yeah, he probably isn't a buy just based on what we've seen. Okay, so that's my wrap up of second row forwards. Now, I think the other major talking point is halfbacks. Still, again, from last week, because Cleary was a massive sell. I still own Cleary in my team. And obviously people who bought Hughes last week are still maybe even looking to sell him this week. Now, I'll quickly answer this question from Davey K because it's somewhat relevant. He's saying, should I ditch Cherry Evans for deal bags, have Hines, Munster and Ezra Mam? So obviously it sounds like you're selling Cherry Evans for deal bags via Ezra Mam with duels. I personally would not be selling Cherry Evans. Reason I say that is because I think Cherry Evans is actually still the best halfback to go for if you're looking for a halfback, like selling Cleary. Just because he's got the pedigree of the season. I know his 3-round average is awful of 36, but he had 2 tons before that. And it's a decent price, 559k, and it's mainly the matchup this week as well with the Titans. Next week's tough against the Sharks. Raiders and Bulldogs is fine. You can definitely play him on those ones. So yeah, Titans I think is the main reason why I would say Cherry Evans is still the best purchase, and also the more of the pedigree as well. So Davey, to answer your question, I would not be selling Cherry Evans. I know Dillbag scored very well last week, and I'm very happy about that as an owner. But I feel like it's a bit of a sideways move. Just having a look at your trades. Yeah, you have 6 trades left, so you do have a few trades up your sleeve, but I still feel like you could get better value out of that trade. Because Cherry Evans I still think will be fine. Like, I don't think Dillbags is going to be so much of a better option than him that it's worth it. So that's just my personal opinion. But yeah, I still think that Cherry Evans is worth the purchase this week. Like a couple of people, shout out to Adrianosaurus, Adrianosaurus Rex on Twitter. I've just put his question from Twitter up there. He said, is there a 7 that isn't Hines that's worth bringing in? He has clearly money to spend, and I'm in the exact same position. I am still thinking Cherry Evans is the best, just because of the Titans matchup for this week. Now, Reynolds, I kind of said he was like number 3 in my opinion. So last week I ranked Cherry Evans, Hughes, and Reynolds. Obviously, Hughes didn't work out, but I had Reynolds just after him. Now, that was just due to the draw with the Dragons and the Knights coming up in the next 4 weeks. Now, if you look at that little chart that's also next to Jerome Hughes there, the Knights are the 8th team in terms of conceding points as halfbacks, so they're kind of middle of the table. The Dragons, though, are 2nd. So there's only the Warriors who actually concede more points to halfbacks than the Dragons. So that was another thinking behind Reynolds. Maybe if you really want to go for more of a pod, but you'd have to play him on matchups. So you'd probably buy him this week, play him against the Knights, bench him versus Storm and the Eels, and then play him against the Dragons. But the way that Broncos have been performing, it just kind of makes me a little bit more concerned with Reynolds. You could say the same thing about Cherry Evans though. So I feel like you could kind of pick your poison between the two. I feel like overall as a draw, Cherry Evans is probably slightly better. So that was my main thinking for maybe thinking with Cherry Evans, but Reynolds is still maybe worth consideration. Now, a couple of others who I think have been a bit more talked about this week. So shout out to SuperCoach Guns. He was talking about Sean O'Sullivan. Now, Sean O'Sullivan's actually had a 3-round average of 74, and I believe for the season he's got an average of 60 plus. He's only really had one game where he scored kind of low. So I'm just going to bring up his numbers here real quick. So 1 second. So yeah, if you look at his scores this season, so he's had 2 lower scores against the Dragons and Knights, funnily enough, in rounds 2 and 3, where he scored 31 and 43. But outside of that, 84, 70, 80, 70, and 71. He was goal kicking in some of those games, but he wasn't goal kicking last week and he still scored 71. So he is an option to consider. If we just talked about how, the Warriors concede the most points to halfback, so that matchup in round 24 looks really good for the Panthers. And look, the Panthers, Kikau has been named on the bench, but I do expect that if he's fit for what was I supposed to say? If he's fit this week from captain's run, I think that will improve the Panthers, and I do think that it will actually help out someone like Sean O'Sullivan. He's got a bit better of a target on the left-hand side. So yeah, look, the Panthers are still playing just fine, and Storm won't have Jerome Hughes. So I think Sean O'Sullivan is definitely a pod. I think if you're looking for pods, then yeah, I don't mind going with O'Sullivan. Gianna's saying that Sean O'Sullivan's break-even is actually 46. You are correct. What I accidentally wrote here was his season average, not the break-even. So thank you for correcting me on that one. Yeah, obviously if there's any errors here, let me know so I can clean it up in the stream. But yeah, I don't mind O'Sullivan as a pod. The draw is not great. That's the only downside. So it does feel like you are clutching a little bit at that one game against the Warriors. But look, he's had good scores this season, and some of those scores were against decent opposition. So you look at, he scored a 70 against the Eels when that was when the Panthers were down to 12 men as well. And then 84 against Manly in round 1. So to be fair, he hasn't actually had that big of a score against that, like a Melbourne or like a Sharks or anything. But look, definitely a pod. I still feel Cherry Evans just over him, but I am thinking more and more that because there's no standout, maybe just go with the pod. Just go with the lower owned guy. So that's someone like maybe O'Sullivan. I do prefer O'Sullivan to Fogarty. One person I saw on Twitter was asking about Jamal Fogarty. Not too keen personally. I know the draw is good. And I probably should also mention, that the numbers below these tables is what I've added up is the difficulty of opponent in terms of conceding points to halfback. So the lower the number, the better. So someone like Fogarty's got the best draw, arguably. So maybe a pod that you can consider. Goal kicking just doesn't thrill me. Like, he's had games against easy opposition, but just not quite done it. So for me, Fogarty, I'm kind of not too keen on, despite the draw being very good. Sam Walker is maybe an option as well, but I just don't like the Roosters draw. Apart from that West Tigers game, I do think it's a bit of a tougher run home. So even again for me, at the price, 631k, it's a bit expensive. So Sam Walker, don't feel ideal to go for. Now, Ben Hunt, I'll mention Ben Hunt because I was actually very surprised. Looking at his draw, it's actually the easiest for halfbacks. So Raiders, Titans, Tigers, and Broncos. So it did make me think, could you go Ben Hunt as a bit of a pod? It doesn't thrill me again either. I'm clearly not very hot on any of these guys. But look, if you're a sucker for the draw, and if you really do buy into the whole, this team concedes points to halfbacks, then he's on paper the best option. I would prefer O'Sullivan. I'd probably even prefer Fogarty to Ben Hunt, to be honest. Just because the Dragons, I probably do still give preference to the Raiders over the Dragons in terms of as a team overall. But yeah, again, don't love it. I'm seeing a few questions on captaincy and some other stuff. We'll definitely discuss captaincy, guys, so do stick around for sure. Just wanted to get through this halfback chat. Tom Dearden is someone I do like, though, to be honest. I mentioned it last week. I think one of the strategies was go a bit cheaper with Dearden and then use that money to upgrade elsewhere. He banged out 72, I believe, last week, so he's got a 3-round average of 74. Obviously, last week was a good matchup against the Dragons. I want to say Did they verse the Dragons? They versed the Dragons, I think. Roosters is obviously a bit of a tough matchup, but look, Warriors, best team to concede points to halfbacks. So you can buy. Look, honestly, I'm even thinking maybe I just wait a week and maybe I just buy Dearden next week. Who knows? So yeah, Dearden is still someone I think is solid. You could buy this week. You could still play him against the Roosters, or you could bench him. Part of me is thinking maybe you go Dearden over Cherry Evans just for the money saving. If that frees up enough money for me to do something else, that's a good upgrade elsewhere on my team. But I think if you're going for a proven asset, I would still say Cherry Evans Reynolds are number 1 and number 2. If you're looking for pods, I would say I'd go Sean O'Sullivan, Dearden, Fogarty, and Ben Hunt in order. Sam Walker's solid. I just don't love our draw, and the price is a little bit pricey for me as well. The Dogs, sorry, of course. The Cowboys played the Bulldogs last week. Thank you, Clutch Camel, for correcting me on that one. So yeah, that's my ranking of halfbacks. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Maybe the last thing I'll touch on is Jerome Hughes, whether you hold or sell. I've written here he's a hold, although I'm thinking more and more about it because of the few weeks we have left, and Storm don't have a great run home. To be honest, I think he's probably fine to sell if you can find a halfback that you do like. Anyway, that's my halfback rant over. Hopefully that was helpful for anyone out there who's thinking about different halfback options. A few questions I saw from Josh. You've asked Tapine to Appy or Murray. Spoke about Tapine just before. Definitely think Murray is the shout over Appy, in my opinion there. Clutch is asking, who would you get rid of, Tapine or Hughes? Hughes, I would say, because it looks like Tapine could be 1 week. Hughes could be 1 to 2 weeks, but I also just feel like Tapine, when he comes back, is probably safe for a 65-70 average, whereas Hughes, I'm not sure if I can say that with the same amount of confidence. And I think there are more halfback options that you can go to than, say, a front row forward. Peter, great comment. Doesn't matter who you pick because they will most likely be injured this week. Yep, that's the trend that has been the last few weeks for sure. Okay, I won't maybe go into this section too much about selling Taylor May or Isaac Dongo because I believe they're in the top 10 most traded out. Look, for me personally, I think it'd be great to sell one of these two via deals to Cam Murray. People are looking at that. I think it's a good move. Not entirely relevant to these two, but I can see there was a question about selling Brian To'o. I think someone asked Brian To'o to Adam Dewey, I believe was the question. Now with To'o, he has been underwhelming, as have not Penrith, sorry. To'o has been kind of underwhelming. But even Dewey, only scored about 53 last week versus the Knights. So I think Tigers don't have a great run home either now. So for me, I'd probably stick with To'o. I don't think I'd be trading him out for Dewey. I feel like that's a bit of a sideways move, and I think I'd rather just keep To'o and just play in matchups. Like for example, round 24. Like a matchup like that, To'o, if you've held To'o, people have sold him or they just can't get to him, he could be a pod. And against the Warriors, he could go 100 plus. So that's also part of my thinking why, I think it's fine to sell Taylor May and Isaac. They haven't been doing the best. To be fair, Isaac has got a 5-round average of 68 though. Taylor May has definitely fallen off the rails. I do think that if Kikau is back this week, I'd probably lean to holding at least Thungo, because I think Kikau being back will help him quite a bit. With Taylor May, I feel like he's kind of just been affected without Luai in the team. So I feel like he's easier to sell. He's obviously less value though. That's the only thing. So like for example, if you were the only way you can get to Cam Murray was selling Isaac Dongo, I would do it, to be honest. Same with Taylor May, but obviously there's a $200,000 difference there. But yeah, I feel like Cam Murray is one of the few guys who I'd say, yeah, fine to sell for. There is a question coming up about centre wings soon enough though, so I might just quickly get to that as well. So these are a couple of questions I pulled from Twitter, and I'll get to some of your questions. I might just do some of your questions as well around this time. So one question came from Phil, which was the best 4 centre wings for the final 4 rounds. So he currently has Isaac, Taylor May, Mulatalo, Val Holmes and Garrick. He needs another gun that's not named Joey Manu. So some of the teams I pointed out with the best draw are the Sharks, Dragons, Raiders and Manly. So again, this is what I mentioned earlier. A lot of the not top teams have got decent runs home. So someone like a Lomax has been a bit underwhelming, but he does have the Titans and the Tigers back-to-back from next week. So if you are looking again for a bit of a pod, goal kicking, he has got a bit of a ceiling. I don't mind going for him. I feel like this centre wing position, you can definitely take more punts because the likes of To'o, etc. are not performing as well. Dewey is obviously someone that you can still consider. I would have said Dewey much more strongly last week, but just with him not performing that well, and the Tigers not having a great draw home. So for example, the Tigers now have the Sharks, Roosters, Dragons and Canberra. So I'd say Dragons is probably the only good matchup there. Dewey is kind of matchup proof though. So I still feel like I'd say Dewey's probably, I would rank Dewey, to be honest, above Lomax. I'd probably say that because he has scored 87 versus Penrith, and then 122 against the Broncos. So I still think Dewey is probably up there in your top 4 or 5 centre wings for people looking at centre wings. Yeah, maybe a Lomax. If you're looking for someone from the Sharks, maybe a pod like a Jesse Ramian. Raiders, their backs never really threw me that much, so I probably would avoid the Raiders backs. And Manly, maybe you take a punt on Jason Sarr, but I don't think people would be going that hard into Manly just with how they're kind of they've not been that good recently in the last few weeks. Anyway, that's that question. And then another question came from Connor, which was, given the Rabbits tough run home, should you dump Alex Johnston? Now, to me personally, again, Johnston feels like a bit of a luxury sell. Like I would think that there are other options to sell ahead of him. And like, look, I'm looking at his last, since round 18, he had the Bulldogs, who we obviously know is not the easiest matchup anymore, scored 97. He scored 82 versus the Melbourne Storm, 64 against the Sharks, 55 against the Warriors. I don't see any reason to be selling Alex Johnston in my opinion. Parramatta actually do concede a lot of points to wingers. So, no, Connor, to answer your question, no reason for me to be wanting to sell Alex Johnston. You can sit him in the tough matchups, you can play him in the good ones, but with the Rabbitohs clicking, for me, he's an easy, comfortable hold. So those are 2 questions I just wanted to pull up from Twitter. And we'll get to some of the trades as well, the more common trades, like, ins and outs. And then I'll probably do this a bit quicker though, just to try to get more of your questions. So for example, if you look at the top 10 trade ins, so we've already spoken about Murray and Cherry Evans, so I won't discuss them too much. Garrick, yes, Garrick was already part of this other person's top 4 centre wings. I do think he's a decent purchase this week against Titans. Munster goal kicking at fullback last week, scored 147. It's probably fair game that Garrick does similar. So I know that Manly have not been great, but he scored 74 last week, and I feel like he's a bit more matchup proof because he's got the goal kicking. And out at fullback, he's actually got pretty decent base as well. So I do think Garrick is an okay purchase this week for sure. Like if you don't own Garrick and you're selling Taylor May or Tungo for him, I'd say yeah, that's probably a fair trade. Latrell, look, I can't fault if you're selling Cleary and you've got Hines at dual, and you can switch him to halfback, and so you can buy a fullback. Yeah, 100%, nothing wrong with buying the Troll. He's just absolutely killing it, and I don't think he's going to slow down that much with this tough run home. You might regress to like a 70 average, but look, you'll take a 70 average for the run home. Payne Haas, I don't think is a must purchase, but I imagine a lot of people are selling Tapine to get to Payne Haas, which is fair enough. He's probably the 3rd best front row forward, but again, he feels like a bit of a move where I don't think he possesses the ceiling that necessitates that trade. Someone like a Murray, though, definitely has a ceiling. Hines and Munster, yeah, look, I can't talk anyone out of buying those two. Hines, I think Hines is the most must-have player for the rest of this season for SuperCoach, because he's probably the best captain in most weeks for the run home, because he's got the best draw. He's the best gun with the best draw, like in terms of that combination. So yeah, can't complain with anyone buying Hines nor Munster. I do still think he's going to be a very good option. Now, Isaac Thompson looks like a bit of a downgrade option, so if anyone is trying to downgrade to raise money and get someone who's playing instead of a straight nuff, then fine. But personally, I think if you're going for a 175k person, just go for a dual nuff, in my opinion. Harry Grant is fine. Scored big last week, 97. But I do think someone like Damien Cook is probably a better option, but I do think he's a lot more expensive. So, look, Harry Grant is fine. We've already spoken about Angus as well. In terms of the sells, I think we've spoken about most of these guys. We'll give my thoughts on Tapine, Hughes, Dungo. Now, Kickout, if he's ruled out, I think, yeah, fair enough, sell him for someone like a Cam Murray. If he's playing this week, though, I think you can hold. But to be honest, I actually don't mind selling him for Murray, even if he is playing this week, because it's Melbourne, and he's not as consistent as someone like a Murray. So I don't mind selling him for Murray. Cleary's fine. Taylor May is fine. Now, Talakai. There was a question actually about Talakai that came through a little bit earlier from Josh. He's saying, would you sell Talakai now or hold him for the run home? The fact that he's now 450k and the Sharks now have their dream run home. So I'll quickly just pull up the Sharks draw just to remind people what their run home is. So you've got Tigers, Manly, Bulldogs and Knights. It's a pretty good run home. It's probably the best run home for one of the top teams. So for me, at that price, look, I know he's been very underwhelming. He scored 25 last week. But I think now that he's lost all that value, got the good run home, I feel like you probably just have to stick it out and hold him. And he does have that duel, so it can come in handy, flipping players around. Mitch Moses is fine. Looks like he's not going to be back for the SuperCoach season. Kula is not a must-sell. Like, he's got a decent matchup this week, but I get it if people are using duels to get to someone like Murray or they're selling to like a Dewey. And then Ezra Mam, I think, to be honest, I'd probably hold Ezra Mam this week. He's got the Knights. I'd play him. But then, yeah, he's probably fine to flip at that point. I've got the actual trades as well of the most popular trades. So obviously, majority of people selling Tapine are buying Cam Murray, which, to be fair, I can't fault the move. I think I've kind of outlined it earlier. If you've got 3 or more trades, I say you can probably get away with it because there's still scope for you to bring back Tapine. Otherwise, I'd probably say with 2 or less, I wouldn't probably do it. I'd probably just hold on to Tapine because it looks like he might only be out for the 1 week. Unless you're kind of in your must-win head-to-head, then I think, yeah, trading him out for a gun probably will, if it helps in your head-to-head, or you don't have the cover, then yeah, I'd say that's fair enough. Okay, we'll probably move on from here. Oops. So we'll get into captaincy. So there's a few questions coming in about captaincy this week. And after I get to captaincy, I'll quickly talk through my team, and I'll then get to your questions as well. We'll try to keep the stream a little bit shorter, I think, given that probably not as many talking points this week. Actually, shout out to Gazraki. You make a good point here on, this is more halfback relevant. You're talking about with Tamari Martin back, you think that Reynolds will be fine. That's fair enough. I think Tessie New can sometimes ruin those set plays, whereas Tamari Martin's quite a decent ball player. That could actually help Reynolds out. So maybe that's some other reason to maybe consider Reynolds a little bit more this week. So in terms of vice captaincy and captaincy this week, like Hines feels like the safe and the most obvious captain this week. So that's probably where I'm leaning at the moment. You could obviously put a vice captain on Hines instead, and then maybe captain a Garrick. Personally though, what I would recommend, I think this week, is if you own Matt Burton, I'd put the vice captain on him. Just looking at that table there, we already saw that New Zealand concede the most points to halfbacks. In terms of 5/8s, it's not as bad. They're 6th, but look, it's still pretty good. And look, there's not really that much of a difference between halfbacks and 5/8s, to be honest. So I think Burton has a great ceiling. He's goal kicking. So I do think he's a great vice captain shout. And then, go into a captain Hines. I think the majority of people probably own Latrell. I would very strongly consider vice captaining Latrell this week. I know on paper it's a tough matchup, but he's got an average of 82 versus Parramatta historically. And if you look at this table here, Parramatta are the second worst team at defending fullbacks for SuperCoach points. He's goal kicking. He's playing very well. Thank God he got subbed off with 20 minutes to go because I don't own, and he was already on 152. So for me, if I own Latrell, I would be vice captaining him with confidence. I would be doing vice captain Latrell, captain Hines. That would be my ideal combo this week. Now, I don't own the Trell, so I'm probably going to have to look elsewhere with my own vice-captain. I have briefly thought about doing vice-captain Hines and captain Garrick, but I just don't have as much confidence in Manly as I do, say, with the Sharks. So for me, Hines is the captain, and vice-captain for myself is probably going to be one of Teddy or Munster. I think in my own team at the moment, I've got it on Munster. Part of the thinking is that he's a big game player. He can do well against Penrith. Penrith are not obviously as strong as what they are for early this season. So I'm on vice-captain Munster, captain Hines. But yeah, I would strongly encourage people who own Latrell to vice-captain Latrell. Honestly, you could even captain him straight, because I do think that I just have a feeling, I feel like this matchup is going to be good for Latrell. Parramatta have had a good 2 weeks, but I feel like they're going to, I feel like the Rabbitohs are going to get this one, and I think Latrell's going to go big this week. That's my, if you want to call it, hot take for this week. I think Latrell's going to go massive. So I would say vice-captain Latrell with confidence. I'll see a few other questions here on captaincy. I know Ian, I believe, was asking a little bit earlier. So Ian was saying Latrell VC, Garrick or Hines C. Kind of answered that. I think would be Latrell VC and Hines C. I think Sandy may have been asked earlier this stream as well. Yeah, captaincy for this week. We've kind of discussed that now. Not too many more questions on captaincy, so I might just leave it there. But that's what my thoughts for captaincy. Okay, that's actually the end of the preview stuff. So I've just realized I haven't got my team up. So let me do that quickly. Oopsie. This is the live viewing that you guys get to see. Okay, cool. So I think Ian also was asking a little bit earlier what my trades were like. Oh, Jake, I take offense to that. If that's Aman's hot take, I'm avoiding it like the plague. I don't like to brag. I don't like bragging. But the last time I had feelings about captaincy was Manu's 191, and it was Teddy's 150 something. So I've had a couple of good, more recent captaincy feels. So just stick with me on this one. Stick with me on this one. I feel like Latrell's going to be good this week. I hope he isn't. I don't own him. I don't own Latrell. I hope he goes crap. But I think he's going to go good. Okay, we'll get to my team quickly. To be honest, there's not really too much I'm looking at here. I've got decent cover. All of you are finally now playing, all of you Tapine owners are finally joining me and playing Max King. I've been sticking with Max King for like ages now. Haven't owned Tapine at all. So you're all joining me here. I'm going to play all my second row forwards. Hines captain. I'm going to play Munster and Dillbags for sure. Now, I've actually got Taylor May in my starting team. I'll probably change that to Thungo. I should probably just do it right now. The reason why I had a feeling about playing Taylor May was Melbourne's right edge defensively hasn't been very good for a long time. So I thought Taylor May might be a decent play. There's a little rhyme for you. But I think Thungo is probably going to be the safer option, especially if Kikau does play. So, I'll reserve Garrick. Drinkwater against the Roosters isn't a great matchup. So, part of my thoughts were, like, I could save trades again this week. Last week I did one trade. I did Nick Meaney to Adam Dewey. I could save trades this week, given that it's kind of a week where a lot of the better teams are versing each other. So it's kind of hard to nail down a must-buy for this week. The only person I could maybe think of is Cherry Evans. So I could do maybe Cleary to Cherry Evans. And then what I could do is maybe I could take the reserve off Drinkwater. Maybe I can take it off for Thungo and just play Garrick instead. I'll probably play all my second row forwards. So honestly, that's the only thing I've thought of at the moment, is taking out Cleary for Cherry Evans. Now that leaves me with only one trade after I do that. So let me just quickly do that trade just to kind of help you visualize it. So let's say if I did that. So if I did that move, I'd have 200k in the bank, which feels okay because I'd have one trade with 200k. So I feel like I could do quite a bit with that. You don't know. So I might do that trade this week, but I'm not set on it. I'm not set on it just because of the, I'd only have one trade left at that point. So part of me is thinking maybe I save it, and then just do the trade next week for someone else. The only thing is Cleary, like 690k. It's a lot of money to be sitting on the bank. It's a lot of money to be sitting on my bench. So part of me is thinking if I go Cherry Evans, he's got a good matchup this week. I feel like a lot of people are not going to buy it. I mean, I think he was third most bought this week. But I think a lot of people are going to be put off by the fact that he's gone really low the last 3 weeks. So maybe this matchup against Titans, he could be a bit of a pod. And then I've got one trade left, and I just keep my fingers crossed that no injuries hit me, and then I don't do anything else and I just save that last trade for an injury emergency. Maybe I'm thinking that's what I do this week, but not set on it. I'll give it some more thought, but that's what I'm thinking with trades at the moment for this week. So what I'll do now is I'll do like dedicated questions for like 10 minutes or so. So they'll take us to close to an hour. And then we'll probably wrap up the stream there because I think there's a little bit less to talk about. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about sit and starts. Cool. So yeah, keep your questions coming in. And obviously, guys, if you do enjoy the stream, really appreciate a thumbs up on it as well. So my car was asking, who should I trade in for Tapine? Look, if you're selling Tapine, look, it's a very open-ended question. Are you buying a front row forward? Are you buying a second row forward? Actually, one front row forward I will mention is, if you are again looking for a pod, Josh Papali'i. So let me just quickly show you his stats recently. So if I go front row forward and you go 5-round average, sorry, not 5-round average, 3-round average, he's up there. He's got a 76 3-round average. Part of my thinking is that, look, he hasn't been the best Supercoach option this season. Like, he's got a tick under 60 average, but he's scored a few tries the last few weeks, and I do think that without Tapine in the team for at least this week, probably he's going to play bigger minutes, you'd think. Like, his minutes have been pretty steady, about 55 for the last month or so. And so I think he's got a bit more of a ceiling. It's not a great trade-in for a front row forward, but again, I'm thinking pods. If you're thinking pods, he's probably a big one. Let me just quickly find his ownership stats for you, just so I'm not making it up that he is a pod. He could actually be very well owned for all I know, but I don't think that's the case. So let's just load up this website here. So Josh Papali'i is 0% owned in the top 100, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 and 20,000. So he's definitely a pod. So if you are selling a front row forward like Tapine, just go for his teammate who'll take the extra minutes. And scored a try last week and could get a few more. Dragons, Knights, Tigers, and Manly in the next month. You can see some meaties in there for Papali'i. So I'll quickly give a shout out to him for front row forward. Captain Haas, definitely wouldn't captain Payne Haas. Just doesn't have the ceiling for me, and I think Hines is a much better option in my opinion. Would you play Tass or May this week? So Taylor May or Isaiah Tass. Tass has got the Eels. May's got the Storm. I'm just going to have a think. You know what I'll do actually? Sorry, just to answer that question. I'll bring this back up. And I'll just have a look at this table here in terms of points conceded. So if I have a look at this here, Eels are 6th to centre wing. Storm are 11th. Although that's a season-long average, so obviously it's taken into account that, Melbourne have been pretty good defensively. I mean, Tass's floor is about 40. He doesn't really have to do much to get about 35, 40. I do think it's a better matchup. So I think I'd probably play Isaiah Tass. Finn is asking, is it okay to have 4 Rabbits players? Murray, Cook, Latrell, Johnston. No, I wouldn't worry about that too much. I know they've got the tough run, but Latrell's a gun, Murray's a gun, Cook's a gun, Johnston's a gun too. So I think there's nothing wrong with having that. Ian, all right, your bold prediction, let's hear it. Latrell double, 100 plus. Yeah, sounds about right in my opinion. Hines try, 100 plus. Yep. Teddy double, 150 plus. I do like the sound of that. Cooler double, 100 plus. He has had a few 100 plus games as well, so I don't think any of those bold predictions are completely out of line. Ian? Josh is asking, pick 4 to play in the centre wings. Lomax, Ramian, May, Garrick, Manu and Holmes. Okay, for me, Garrick, Manu and Holmes are must plays each week. No question about it. So then it's one of Taylor May, Lomax and Ramian. I'd probably go Ramian with the Tigers matchup. I feel like you've kind of got to play him with the Tigers matchup. Whereas Lomax has got Canberra, it's a bit tougher. So I'd probably say Ramian as your 4th, with Garrick, Manu and Holmes being the must plays. Aman, will you shave your head if the Roosters make the grand final? No, I won't be doing that. although I may do Movember, but that's a bit different, and that's also not around the grand final. Eli saying, sorry, tempted to chuck the Amen on Ezra Mam. If he flops, this comment never existed. Look, go with your gut, but I wouldn't recommend captaining Ezra Mam. I mean, I didn't even talk about any Broncos players there, did I? They do have a good matchup this week. I think just overall, none of their options stand out as like massive ceiling guys, like on a consistent basis. They're not like a Hines or a Latrell or a Tedesco. You know, like Reynolds can be quiet. Haas can go like 60. So I don't think I'd be captaining Ezra Mam in my opinion. Jake saying, thoughts on Thungo and Tapine out for Brown and Kolomutangi / Sean Lane. So I don't mind going for Sean Lane out of him and Kolomutangi. Tapine out. Look, go back to the beginning of the stream. I had quite a lot of. I spoke a lot about Tapine and like the cases where you could sell, where you could hold. So I'm just going to assume that you're fine to sell and that you don't have cover. So yeah, I think Sean Lane is who I'd prefer. Now Dylan Brown, I know he's been killing it. I'm not trying to like talk people out of him because I own him and I want him for myself. That's definitely not the case. I just feel like at 5'8", is there a better option? Rabbitohs, Bulldogs, Broncos, and Melbourne. I mean, he's got good scores against all these good teams. Like a 58 against Rabbitohs is not that bad. Bulldogs, he scored 44 is actually one of his lowest scores this year. Broncos 62. Melbourne, I'm pretty sure he scored a ton last time he played them. Ooh, I don't mind it. Getting Dill bags. He looked really good, but Manly also weren't ideal. They didn't look great. Let me know how many trades you've got left, Jake, and then I'll answer that, and then I'll confirm that question for you. I don't mind Lane and Brown. They have a nice combination going, that's for sure. So it is good owning both of them. Ian saying, can I hear your bold predictions? I would say the only bold prediction I had was Latrell. I think Latrell's going to go 100 plus, basically. Josh is saying he's got one more question. It's still Tapine to Murray or Appy, but you have Blake and Brayley and enough at hooker. So would you still get Murray over Appy? Yeah, I think so. I think, look, hooker's not a position that's going to hurt you if you've got a bit of a different option. Like Break Blaze got the good draw for the run home. He can get you maybe 60, 65 average. So, yeah, I'd still take Murray over Appy. Would you play Talakai over Drinkwater? And you should make an Instagram page. Well, I have an Instagram page, but not for this account. I've got my own personal one. I'll think about that maybe for next season. I just like to be on YouTube and Twitter. I find that I'm very lazy when it comes to having a lot of social media. In any case, Talakai over Drinkwater. Oh, geez, that's hard, eh? He's got the Tigers and Drinkwater's got the Roosters. I think you'd have to play Drinkwater, in my opinion. Like, yes, Talakai's fine to hold, but he's had easy games for a long time and still hasn't cracked like 60 points. So, yeah, I'd probably still play Drinkwater over Talakai. Fafita, Olukwatu, Crichton out for Murray. Greg, I'm not sure if you're asking for yourself or for myself because I've got basically those same second row forwards. I can't justify selling any of them. Just with how little trades that I've got, I just don't think I can sell any of those three. Like, I'm sure that it's an improvement to Murray, but when Olukwatu's got the Titans, Fafita's got like the Dragons and the Warriors coming up, Crichton's looking good, I don't think I can justify it for Murray, to be honest. So, like, for myself, I don't think I'll be able to get Cam Murray. I just kind of have to suck it up and accept that I won't be able to get him. D. Perry says he has one trade left. Should he save his trade or should he trade out Barnett for Crichton, Young, Hudson Young, Blake Brayley, Garrick, or Drinkwater? To be honest, unless you can't cover Mitch Barnett adequately, I'd probably hold it. Just, yeah, I know a few players have got 0 trades left, but I feel like having that one trade can still be very useful. You know, any restings, like let's say for example, like I'm sure it won't happen, but can you imagine if Nico Hines was like missing for a week? Like almost everyone has him. If you were in a position where you could actually sell him and have 0 downside of, you know, others not being able to move him on, and you can get like, let's say it happens round 25. I'm just going to quickly look at round 25. This is a bit of a random exercise to emphasize my point. But if I look at round 25, Manly have the Bulldogs, Raiders have the Tigers, Broncos have the Dragons, Tigers have Raiders, Warriors have Titans. So I'm just trying to look for some of the better matchups here. What I'm trying to say is that if, let's say hypothetically Nico Hines was out and you still have that one trade, Adam Reynolds is playing, his goal kicking versus Dragons. Dragons got nothing to play for. Broncos fighting for top 4. You just take a punt on Reynolds, and he gets you like 100 points. It's not impossible, and that's 100 points is a massive gain. So yeah, I'm trying to advocate patience. I know it's very boring, but I'm trying to advocate patience. I'm trying to exercise some patience myself. Jake saying he has 4 trades. Yeah, to be fair, with 4 trades, Jake, I think I'm fine with trading out Tapine for Lane and Tungo for Brown. But look, Tungo for Brown, I'd probably, if you can, I'd rather get Murray, unless you own him already. Josh is saying, please make an Instagram page. I don't have Twitter, and I want to be able to message you throughout the week. You would get more popular too. Look, you can always message throughout the week on the YouTube comments. I try to make sure that at least before lockout, I will try to reply to every comment that's left on the not Instagram. You're putting words in my mouth. I'll try to make sure I reply to every comment on YouTube. So look, if you're not able to get me on Twitter, like post questions on YouTube, that's fine. Others can always help out too. But I'll always try to make sure I reply to every comment on YouTube as well. So no need to stress about not being able to reach me or anything like that. We're on about 57 minutes, so we've probably close to hit the hour mark. I'll take this last question from Greg. He's asking, is Lolo going to take a hit now that Cotter is back starting? There is a risk of that, for sure. I'm just going to have a quick look at Tamalolo's and what he scored last week. Yeah, 55. So kind of regressed a little bit. But, I think anyone who's got Tamalolo, you're probably not going to be looking to sell. And I probably don't think he's a massive buy now either. So no, he probably will take a hit, but I guess it probably doesn't make such a big difference for like any trade implications. Jake saying, yeah, he's got Murray. He's thinking Tapine out for Lane or Crichton. Yeah, look, I think with 4 trades, you're kind of in a better position than most. So yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier with the second or forward section. I do prefer Sean Lane. I think he's just more consistently hitting the 80s than Angus. Like Lane's been hitting 80s and 90s without scoring tries, whereas Angus has to kind of hit tries. So yeah, I'd probably lean Sean Lane there. Josh is saying, what's stopping you from making a page? I haven't got enough time. I'm a busy man. That's about it. And Ian is saying Corey Oates hat-trick. Against the Knights, I won't put it past him. All right, everyone, we'll probably leave it there. We're getting up to about an hour. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Do give the stream a like as well if you did enjoy it. I'll try to get the audio of this out on audio platforms as well for anyone who's wanting to listen in afterwards. So, yeah, I'll try to do that as well. Jake says, sounds good. If I lose, it's on you. Absolutely not. All your trade scenarios are down to you guys out there. But no, look, feel free to blame me if I get that decision wrong. Look, Sean Lane's been good. I've got faith in Sean Lane. I own him. He's been good for me. So hopefully he's good for you as well if you get him this week. Okay, there's a couple of last questions. I'll just quickly do them. Pick 2, Talakai, Mam, Drinkwater. To play, Mam and Drinkwater. Sandy's asking Lane and Kolomatangi. I'd still go Sean Lane in my opinion. I think he's more consistent than Kolomatangi and a slightly better run home. Alright guys, going to end it there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll catch you all in the next one.